How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here the next 2 hours, as we are every Sunday night, talking pro wrestling. We've got Bryan Alvarez here, and tonight is our kind of a best of show, the best of a bunch of different categories that we're going to talk about tonight. In about 25 minutes with Larry Matisic. Of course, we've had on the show numerous times, and Mike Tenay, the professor from NWA TNA, for the two of the oldest sane historians that I know. They've been combined. I figured they have been watching wrestling for 85 years between the two of them, and I've been watching for over 30. So
I'm at about 8.
Really? You've only been watching 8? No way. No, you've been watching like 15.
Yeah, that's probably about right.
Okay, he's trying to but anyway.
Hardcore for about 8.
Okay, you've been doing a newsletter for 8.
I know. It coincided with the beginning of my wrestling viewing career.
Okay, well anyway, we'll be talking about some of the greatest performers that we've ever seen. It's kind of like our theme for tonight's show. We want to do a special issue of The Observer. I want to do it around WrestleMania time, actually, next year, where we do balloting and things like that for the greatest of all time, because we did it in 1986, I think.
That's very brave of you, by the way.
Why do you say that? Well,
after all the Hall of Fame stuff, another balloting thing.
That kind of balloting isn't that bad. Hall of Fame, I want to do it like March is good because we got the awards coming up now. In The Observer, so I don't want to mess with it now, obviously, because we got the awards coming in early January. And then the Hall of Fame's August, so I got something kind of in the middle. I don't know. We haven't done a best of since 1985, 86, somewhere in there. And I don't even remember one. I just remember, you know what, it may not have even been in The Observer who won, because I was writing a book at the time that never got published.
Was it the Who's Who?
No, it wasn't in the Who's Who book. I did a book, it was like wrestling book of lists type of thing, that like some publisher wanted me to do, and I worked all summer on it. And then we got rejected by publishers all over the place because, as you know, wrestling fans can't read, especially in the 80s when the thing was like really booming. I mean, not booming quite as big as that big period in the 90s, but it was booming pretty big. Like when you're talking about 1986, when it was on NBC once every 6 weeks and doing big numbers. But you know how that goes.
You just made it a picture book where you'd say top 10 of all time and just have 10 photos.
Yeah, well, I did a lot of writing, and I just remembered that the Sheik was like the number one villain in that thing, because when I wrote the Sheik article, I was looking back at my Sheik notes and I had that in there. I want to get to a couple of news notes. But also, real quick, you can call in. We've got a couple of lines open at 1-800-878-PLAY, so I want to get those things lit up, especially if you want to talk about current events, because we've got about 18 minutes before we're going to start talking about the best ofs. And we got most of the phone calls that are actually up right now are concerning the best ofs as opposed to current events. So if you want to talk about current events, we're only going to take the calls for just a couple of minutes, actually. So anyway, if you want to get on, talk about that, do that. Very sad news last night. Moondog Spot passed away in the middle of a weapons battle royal, I believe, concession stand battle royal, at the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis, where he had wrestled on and off for probably about 25 years. One of the real fixtures in that building, some very famous feuds, the Moondogs against the Fabulous Ones. I remember that one vividly, including one of the last matches that Jackie Fargo had at the Coliseum. That was a great match. It was old-style Memphis brawling. And in I think it was around 92 or 93, when wrestling was doing really bad and regional companies were doing terrible. And Memphis had a bad year. They did a feud for just about the whole year, it seemed like. It was Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Lawler against the Moondogs, and they just did, what would be called hardcore wrestling now, week in, week out, and they did real business. I mean, it was probably the last, I would say, non-WWF, WCW, or ECW, I guess, did have somewhat of a successful run for a little while. But I mean, not in the same city. I mean, as far as like week in and week out in a small territory, that might have been the last really good run regional pro wrestling ever had, was that feud. He was 51 years old, and apparent heart attack or stroke or both, just slumped in the middle of the battle royal, and just a really, it's always a sad story when something like that happens.
Very similar to the Gary Albright death, where it makes you wonder if there should be a requirement to have these guys get licensed.
Well, there's not a requirement in Tennessee. I mean, now, you wrestle in Washington and Oregon, and what right now? I mean, do you have to take an EKG right now?
No.
You don't?
No.
Did you ever have to?
I've never taken one in my life.
Okay. Well, and Oregon was one of the strictest commissions.
Yeah. And, I was thinking about the whole commission thing, and I was thinking how wrestling works up here, and, we've joked a million times about how stupid some of this stuff is. Like, they make you take a drug test, but you take a drug test once a year when you get your license.
Yeah.
So what is a drug test really doing except making sure that 1 month out of the year you're not doing whatever?
Yeah.
So, and then I think about, Moondog, who was an older guy, and he was a big guy.
He was a big guy and not necessarily in the best of health.
Yeah, and you think, okay, yeah, maybe he would have, gotten all his tests done and everything, and it's not like he was doing a high-risk style or anything like that, and he could have died at the supermarket, or he could have died anywhere. Really, the question is, would it have done any good if he did get licensed the way they license people these days? And I don't know.
Probably not.
Yeah.
You don't know.
They would have told him to trim down and be careful and charge him his money, and that would have been that.
Yeah. Also, I went to the WWE show last night at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, that was so different from a usual WWE show because, I don't know what it's like in Seattle, Tacoma, but out here, what?
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, it was rainy here. But usually when they come to San Jose and Oakland, you get kind of a really nice crowd. It's not too rowdy. WCW had more rowdy fans. Kind of almost clean cut for wrestling. Cow Palace, this was like going back to my childhood. Well, actually, it was like going back to my childhood because that's where I used to go to wrestling in my childhood. But, it hadn't changed. It was like all these people that, it was scary. I saw fights. Not one. I saw, fights in the stands, fights in the parking lot when I left.
Really?
Oh, my God.
I went to the wrong show.
Wow. And then it was WWE, and, it's like, what gets so upset with WWE? It's all entertainment, right?
We were, the crowd that I was sitting in was like exactly what you did not have, a very well-behaved crowd. They just all sat there. They would stand up when people came out, but then they would promptly sit down and get in a very polite. I don't know if I was in a polite section or what the deal was, but there was no fights, nothing. Oh,
I was in a polite section, but it was not a polite building at all. But good show. They put on a good show. None of the matches are like, I don't know, are there any matches better than 3 stars? But it's a fun show. It moves along quick. I don't like the no intermission. I think that it got the crowd tired, and the last 2 matches didn't really have a lot of heat, and they were, not bad. Bill Goldberg and Kane was it's a bad finish, but what they did in the match wasn't bad, and it didn't really have a lot of heat compared to some of the earlier matches. And God, the most dynamic people was like Molly Holly and Trish Stratus. They were good.
How long did the show go total?
About 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Okay. Ours was like over 3.
Yeah.
It was like 7:30 to 10:10 or something like that with no intermission, or 7:30 to 10:35 or something like that. It was so long, and I was kind of getting burned out too. But when it was over, I was like, if they'd had an intermission, it'd be like 11 right now, and I'd really be tired. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Well, God, it's like we got even more wrestling. But the other thing was there were no matches that people used as intermission. Yeah. They were into pretty much every match except for Nick Dinsmore and John Heidenreich, which they turned on immediately, but they didn't go to the bathroom during it. They just heckled those 2 poor people, Yeah. John tried to play heel, and they see him as a babyface on TV, and they don't know who Nick Dinsmore is, and not the best thing for him. Anyway, also Dick Hutton passed away Tuesday night, or Monday night, I should say, in near Tulsa. Dick Hutton was one of the greatest amateur wrestlers, heavyweight wrestlers ever. You look at his credential, you could make a case, as far as college wrestling goes, that he was the best heavyweight ever in this country. He lost 1 match in college. That was to Vern Gagne. Came into pro wrestling, not a dynamic pro wrestler, but a very good actual wrestler and world champion for more than 1 year, NWA champion. So that means that, in that period from mid-1957 or late 1957, November 1957 to January 1959, he was the top dog in wrestling in a sense. So, he was a big star. Faded away pretty quick. A lot of people compared him to Bob Backlund, although realistically, Bob Backlund had a much longer run on top and probably was a more charismatic performer than Dick Hutton. We'll actually probably mention his name later tonight because
Mike Tenay actually saw Dick Hutton when he first started wrestling. I think the first card Mike Tenay ever went to, Dick Hutton was on the card. And when Larry Matisic was a child, Dick Hutton was world, and he would have seen him, I think. I don't know if he was close, but he certainly would be aware of him, and certainly would have heard all the stories about him because, the world champion, St. Louis, and he worked in the office with Sam Mushnick, and that was one of their hand-picked guys. Actually, it was Lou Thesz's hand-picked guy more than anyone else. We're going to go to Tom in Atlanta. Tom, what's going on?
Hey, guys.
Hey.
I had a best-of question, but I can ask you guys anyway. I respect your opinion, but who do you think is, would you say, like, the best American female wrestler that you've seen, like, in the last 20 years? Would it be, like, Molly Holly?
The best American female in the last 20 years?
Yeah.
Wow. That's not easy.
I'd say it's Molly Holly.
There's, like, a huge list of them to choose from.
It might be Molly Holly and Trish Stratus, believe it or not.
Right.
Because, when I watched the women wrestling, of course, now you're talking 20 years, so, because I'm thinking of ones in the 70s that did work full time. I don't remember any of them. Tony Rose was a good worker.
Right.
In the 50s, I think that Lorraine Johnson and Penny Banner were reputedly really good. And we should ask that to Larry Matisic because he would know that. But again, I've watched the last 20 years. Luna Vachon, maybe? I don't know.
I think Trish is better than Luna.
Yeah. Molly Holly's probably better than Trish. Americans. Oh, because you're talking in the 80s, Leilani Kai actually was really good.
Really?
Yeah,
she really caught fire in the WWF, did she?
She wasn't good looking.
Right.
And I think that but she was technically really good. If you saw her tapes in Japan, she was the one who could hang with all of those women and was just as good as they were, or close to as good. So I would say, Molly Holly's so much smaller than Leilani Kai. I mean, the one thing with the women in the WWE that I really noticed last night is they're so short, except for like Lita. Victoria's not short, but Trish is really short. Molly Holly's really short. Jazz is really short. And Leilani was a big girl, so it's different. Not as acrobatic, but she was Leilani Kai was a solid, good worker. Molly Holly, very good. Trish. So I don't know. Someone will call up if there's any that we're missing, maybe, but.
Right.
Those are the ones that come to my mind. I don't know, Brian. What about you?
I would agree with those.
Okay.
I didn't see a whole lot of Leilani Kai, but I think a lot of fans today kind of underestimate the girls that are wrestling today. I mean, some of those girls are really good.
Yeah,
If you really think about it, they are good.
They had one of the best matches last night at the show I was at, and they had the most heated match on the show. And it was, I'd say them and the Dudleys probably had the real, the best match last night.
The Dudleys have something where the crowd they may not draw one single dime these days, and they may look stale on TV, but like live, there's something about them that people just go crazy for.
That I don't really get as far as like how good guys are at the little things that I never notice on television. And I watch TV close, and the Dudleys have a good act. I mean, and you always hear, when you get the house show reports, the Dudleys match always gets great heat, and they know exactly what to do. I mean, Jindrak and Cade, who they worked with last night, are not the greatest, although I tell you what, I was impressed with Cade. Jindrak, Jindrak's got just enough that it's a tease because he looks so great and he's such a good jumper that you think, he's going to be able to put it together and be something, but he's not.
In a while now.
Yeah, I mean,
the other thing is with like TV and pay-per-view, there are things you can do on house shows that you just can't do there, either because of time constraints,
because of time,
whatever.
Yeah.
And these guys know how to do it.
Yeah. Anyway, Tom.
Very, very quickly, is Goldust gone from WWE?
Yes, he is. He was. He's under contract till January, but they're not going to use him anymore, and they're going to let his contract run out.
All right. Good night.
Brian, do you know what night the Video Games Awards are? They advertise it on Spike TV all the time during Raw.
I have no earthly idea.
Okay, if anyone knows, I think that it's Thursday, Wednesday. I don't know. Whatever night the Video Games Awards are, there's going to be a match on the Spike TV Video Games Award between Chris Jericho and Rey Mysterio, taping it Tuesday night in San Jose. So I'll have a report up on how that goes. Rare interpromotional match on Spike TV. So anyway, whatever night that's on, they're putting it in the Video Game Awards show, which I guess putting Rey Mysterio Jr. or Rey Mysterio in Video Game Awards shows probably fits. It's kind of a video game character.
Good match.
Yeah, it'll be a good match. Anything special for Figure 4 this week?
I haven't figured it out yet. Last week was rare when I knew well in advance.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens.
Okay, we are going to go to Jonathan in Savannah, who is the only person who's calling. Well, I am wrong. There's actually another person who's calling about non-greatest of all time. But anyway, Jonathan, what's going on?
Not much, guys. What's going on?
Not too much.
I have a couple questions for you. I'll try to make them real quick. My first one is I was reading in the Observer about, I think it was either this past week's or the week before that, with like the breakdown of the SmackDown rating in the 10 largest Hispanic markets.
Or just 10 largest markets.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, 10 largest markets. My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, New York, Chicago, L.A., SF. I mean, a lot of them are. A lot of those markets are Hispanic, but
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, along with that, I guess that kind of throws my question out. But with what they're doing with Eddie right now, and I know, I was reading, I think it was last week, it was talking about how they're banking on, I guess, overseas, as far as more money overseas. They're making a lot of money overseas.
Right. It's what's it? I forget what this 18, maybe 18% of the company's income is now coming overseas, and they want to get it up to 25%.
Yeah.
They're going to do more touring, more licensing deals overseas. I mean, it's good because, it's not, wrestling's not that strong here. And it's, in some of those countries where they've never seen it, they can go in. They do. They go in, they do great business,
Yeah.
I think that all the shows this week, the SmackDown crew overseas, I think all those shows are sold out.
Okay. Well, with that, I was just wondering, I think I've asked this before, and I'm sure, with just, with who they have, with, whoever's in charge over there in WWE, not Vince, but, well, because I know he doesn't know what's going on, but
he's in charge.
Wow, what confidence.
Well, I'm just saying with the guys that should be used, I know Vince isn't going to use but whoever else is there in the Brain Trust, I don't understand how they can miss the boat on, and I also goes with something I think Shane said in an interview, and they said it before, I'm sure, I've heard it somewhere else, where they said that the fans dictate what they put, the product that they put out or whatever, something along the lines of that.
They say that.
Yeah,
and there's, there is something to it, but ultimately Vince dictates,
Right.
And it's always like that.
Okay, and just with that, I'm just wondering, what does Eddie, what can he do? Are they planning to pull the trigger on Eddie? And I have another question.
I don't see Eddie Guerrero in a different spot than he's been for. What's funny is, for the last 4 years, I was thinking about it because I was thinking about Benoit because Benoit is probably going to get some matches with Brock Lesnar, and it's realistically, Benoit and Guerrero. This will be January will be 4 years that they've been in the company. When they came, when the whole Radicals thing, and they basically the day they came, they were in a certain spot, and here it is 4 years later, and both of them just. One awesome match after the other for years, especially Benoit. But Guerrero's a great worker. Maybe the best in the world even. And they're in the same spot. And Guerrero, certainly from a charisma standpoint, has gained greatly in those 4 years. And I just, and everyone, it's almost everyone, starts out at a spot, and they kind of stay in that spot unless they're really big, and then the big guys keep getting chances to be elevated, and they, and then they don't hang in the spot, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I just don't see, Big Show has the U.S. title, right? So they took it off Eddie. They put it on Big Show. I don't think he's defended it.
I remember Bryan was the one who thought that, isn't it going to be great when...
So great. They were going to do this big, long chase with Eddie Guerrero, and it would finally culminate...
And then when he finally beat him, it was going to be great, and then they didn't even do another match.
Yep. It was over.
Yeah.
I just don't understand, and with, a large, I guess, a large percentage of the SmackDown audience is Hispanic people, wouldn't you try to kind of?
Yes, you would think that. I've been writing that. I feel like I've been writing that every couple of weeks since the summer when Eddie really you could tell that Eddie was starting to gain some momentum and draw. And at the arena shows, the reports that I get, always, Eddie Guerrero's most popular, and the only place their road shows are drawing are the SmackDown shows in the the Hispanic markets, which they did. Hidalgo, Texas was a huge success. L.A. wasn't a huge success, but it was over $200,000. And in all these shows, the people come see Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, and Rey Mysterio was in the opening match in L.A. When they were there last week.
Yeah, and and even on SmackDown, you could tell. I don't think much of it was canned, but with the Eddie chants, the only thing that was louder than that were the chants for Cena. But he's on a hot streak right now. So
yeah. Jonathan, we got to get running because we got both of our guests up.
All right, thanks.
Everybody here. Mike Tanasic.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Michael.
Hey, guys, how's everything going? Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving holiday. Great to be back on the air with you guys.
Yeah, real quick, I want to introduce, of course, Larry Matisic, longtime voice of St. Louis Wrestling, former booker in St. Louis, Sam Mushnick's personal assistant during the glory days of that company. Mike Tanay, of course, as everyone knows, the announcer for NWA TNA, and both of these guys have been watching wrestling basically their whole lives.
He knows Kenji Shibuya.
That's true.
And both of these guys have seen. I know Mike has seen Dick Hutton live. Larry, we talked about Dick Hutton the other day. Did you ever see him live or just on television?
I remember seeing him on television. Did I see him live? I don't think I ever did see him live. Now, if you say that, no, I don't think I did, because he never really worked her after he lost the title in '59. Maybe a few but I was like 10, 11 years old then. Yeah,
so these guys have been watching wrestling literally for over 40 years each, and I've been watching for over 30 years, and we were going to, tonight's show was something I've been looking forward to doing for months, actually, which is like go through and just kind of like go through like the greatest of all time, greatest, wrestler, greatest tag team, greatest world champion, and we've got a bunch of categories up here that we're going to kind of discuss, and you guys can call in if you have questions on the greatest of all time, and we actually have pretty much a full board. We've got one line that you can still call in if you want to jump in at 1-800-878-PLAY. And we'll take some questions as the show goes on. But before, I guess the first one we're going to start with was one that's not on the list because somebody called up before you guys got on the air. Best American Woman Wrestler. What would you guys say?
Wow, Best American Woman Wrestler.
Yeah, I could do the Japanese one a lot easier, but...
June Byers.
June Byers?
That's the first name. Penny Banner.
Penny Banner?
Those are both good suggestions. Got it. More recent vintage... Medusa, I guess, comes to mind for one.
Would you consider Wendy? I mean, she was certainly the most pushed, but...
She was the most pushed. I think, and Bryan and I were talking about this, I think that Molly Holly and Trish Stratus are actually better now.
I have to admit that just the entire way that whole women's roster has really picked things up in the last, whatever it's been, 6 months, 8 months. And I guess it's still a lot has to do with the way that Fit Finlay has been working with those girls.
Yeah.
I guess he probably deserves a lion's share of the credit, but they also have been very impressive. And really, it's just been amazing to see that re-emphasis on women's wrestling and how good the work has actually been.
What's so impressive about that, also, with Trish Stratus impresses me so much because, you look at her coming into wrestling, and the first thing you think is she will never be a good worker because because just of how she looks. Because the fitness model thing. She's so good looking, and the other girls who came from the fitness model. Well, Victoria's actually done pretty well, but most of them, they're models. They're not wrestlers, and she went and she's a real wrestler and a good one.
Very good point. And you cover a lot of generations there. If you go from Byers, Banner, Mildred Burke to Stratus, Medusa.
Mildred Burke. Wow, that's before.
I heard.
I guess in a sense, if you're going to say the greatest American woman wrestler of all time, prominent, you might say Mildred Burke, wouldn't you?
Very possible.
Certainly trained an awful lot of women wrestlers in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
But in her era, the Mildred Burke era, there were a lot of women. That was the heyday of women wrestlers. There were over 100 of them that were working full time.
What other athletic outlet did they have?
That's right. It's a totally different world. Mike Tanay, NWA TNA, every Wednesday night on pay-per-view, and they have one of their biggest matches in a long time this coming Wednesday with Jeff Jarrett defending the NWA title against AJ Styles. AJ Styles had a really good match with Abyss a couple of weeks ago. Probably the best match since, a long time. I keep thinking back to that X Division tournament a couple of months ago as like the high point of the company, Mike. It was like that was the show. Boy, I wish more people had seen that one.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. And I think one of the things that I look forward to is when we do have an NWA World Heavyweight title match like we do this upcoming Wednesday with Styles and Jarrett, it just seems like there's a little bit better atmosphere. I think the way that we, for the most part, treat the NWA Heavyweight title belt, I think it's usually a big deal, and seems to be, for the most part, some of the better cards that we put on when we do have a World's title match on top.
Okay, Larry, real quick, you've got Best of Wrestling at the Chase videos. In fact, I watched one about 2 weeks ago, which had Bruiser Brody and Harley Race, and the Harley Race David Von Erich thing, which was actually a real big deal at the time. And we've talked a lot about David Von Erich actually of late. the Von Erichs, everyone knows, Fritz Von Erich was the promoter in Texas, and he pushed them like crazy, and, everyone knows that, David died, and Kerry died, and Mike, and all that. But the one thing is that, granted, Fritz was a legend in St. Louis wrestling, without a doubt, but, David got over on his own and Drew on his own. I mean, that guy, that was one of the biggest gates in the history of the city when he wrestled Harley Race at the Checkerdome or Arena, whatever it was called then.
It was called the Checkerdome then. Yeah, David had that natural charisma, and you and I were talking about just seeing things in young wrestlers and how you can almost, there's a certain smoothness, a certain comfort in the ring. Well, David Von Erich had that. I saw him wrestle when he was 19 years old the first time he came up, or we actually brought him up because we were doing a benefit basketball game the next night, and Sam didn't want the wrestlers to lose when we played the media, so we had a stacked team. We had David Von Erich and Ron Fuller, people like that. So, but even then, that first night in the ring, you could see he was comfortable there, and David really got over like $1 million. Yeah, we are. I finally, after 20 plus years, have decided to kind of open up my vault. And of the tapes that I made from St. Louis Wrestling, classic St. Louis Wrestling, we're calling it the old wrestling at the Chase shows from 1978 through about 1983. We've got 3 of them out on the market now. I was very skeptical at first. I thought, well, yeah, maybe 10 people will care. And instead, the Post-Dispatch, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, picked up a big article this past week, did some radio shows. I'm doing my Andy Warhol moment now in St. Louis. And we're getting swamped with calls. We've had well over 250 calls as of tonight.
Wow.
And we're also doing some stuff over the internet through WrestlingArchives.com. And I'm kind of blown away, and it's kind of neat how people are reacting to it, saying, whoa, this is so much fun to see this. And looking at the shows now, yeah, wrestling's different, but you know what? The product still holds up very well.
A lot of it does, and you see a lot of the legendary names on the tape, and just interesting stuff. Like there's clip of Harley Race against Jumbo Tsuruta from Japan, Harley Race against Rick Martel from Australia, Harley Race against Randy Alls with Gordon Soley commentating, who later became Randy Rose. But it's interesting to watch old TV studio wrestling. And one thing, the stuff that we all grew, Mike and Larry and I all grew up in what I guess historically now, looking back, were some pretty hot wrestling territories as far as great workers. Obviously St. Louis was considered like the wrestling capital, but I grew up with Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson and Mike, of course, with Fred Blassie, and not that Fred Blassie was the greatest worker, but one of the greatest performers of all time. And Beyer and everyone came to Los Angeles, and there's of course no tapes of any of this stuff because there
wouldn't be these tapes. This is not cutting down any television station at all. That's how wrestling was done. That's how television was done back then. They tape it, erase it, tape over it, replay it, erase it, tape it again until the tape turned to shreds. And if it hadn't been for the fact that I literally was taping off one of the early VCRs, it was about the size of my refrigerator. It cost about $6,000. I think now it's about $1,200, but it wasn't. And it's amazing that I taped off the air. Off an antenna on my roof. And what helped, I guess, was, for one thing, the tape never degraded because it sat in my den for 20 years because I was bitter about and angry about various things in the wrestling business that I'd been involved in.
So you never watched it?
I never watched it. And I was finally convinced, hey, take a look at it. Actually, it was one of my daughter's volleyball coaches who had kind of indicated interest, and she really got me to kind of make her a tape of one. I thought, well, that's not bad. And A led to B, which led to Nick Bocklink, which led to a deal in Japan, and now we had a thing with the local cable network. I was putting it on the air there, and now this thing with the tapes, and it's a second livelihood. It's a second life, and like I said, I'm enjoying the heck out of it, and just pleased that I won't lose any money.
The one thing, it's kind of funny, in St. Louis it's like this. Memphis is another city where it's like this. When you guys were up and running, and you guys were doing, you had times where you were business. We just wrote an article in the Observer a couple weeks ago about, some of the matches, some of the famous matches in St. Louis. You couldn't, you actually got better press coverage than almost any city because of Sam Mushnick, but nevertheless, you never got a huge story about, they just didn't knock you, and now you're like a piece of St. Louis television history.
Well, it's kind of scary. It's funny because, in fact, I just cut the article out of the Post-Dispatch that was used this week, and I mailed it to you, Dave, and you're going to laugh because in the lead he calls me a part of television history in St. Louis. Well, wait a minute. I'm younger than Vince McMahon. I'm not a part of history. Sorry, guys, I won't take that. But no, it is kind of funny, and just how many different people grew up, and just different calls we've had. People say, Yeah, I watched it with my grandfather, or, I watched it with my father, or my dad sat me down. I watched this when I was 14, 15 years old. My goodness, I got to have copies of this stuff. And I don't want to say it was an innocent era. I don't want to say it was a nicer business. It was not. It was every bit as brutal and vicious as it always was. It's a hard business. But, it was still entertainment to a lot of people, and I don't think any of us have to say any apologies for being entertaining and giving the world a chance to kind of relax for 2 hours and say, hey, this is kind of fun.
We're going to go right to greatest world champion ever. And, Larry, you saw, at least for the last 40 years, you've seen every one of them.
Well, I certainly saw the National Wrestling Alliance ones, but yeah,
you've seen all the WWE guys, too.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of the WWE guys, I mean, the first two names that really popped in my head of greatest champions, to my mind, would be Bruno Sammartino and Lou Thesz, simply because when you saw them, even if they didn't have the belt, what was the first thing that came to your mind? Champion.
Yeah, Bruno did have that aura without the belt, like in between, and he was,
as a champion. I'm not saying as a great worker, I'm saying just as a champion over a period of time. And part of that, let's face it, part of that's also a function of the booking, because they had to be protected. Not protected, but you understand what I'm saying. They had to have wins. And that's why, as much as I like Ric Flair, as much as I respect Ric Flair, he's a great performer, but I don't know if he was the greatest champion, because, I mean, how many times did the belt get saved by disqualification? Not his fault, I understand, and I can understand an argument for putting him in there, but, I mean, Bruno and Thesz jump out to me.
Mike, and
isn't that funny, too, because when I was trying to position the people, the same thing popped into my mind about Flair, and obviously the way that Bruno and Thesz were protected by the promotion, and also I think just their own mindsets, too, to protect that. I think you'd have to put them right up at the top. So much of these opinions are so subjective, and I think most fans, I think their opinions are maybe more work-influenced, and I think a lot of people in the business are probably influenced by amount of money that you draw. So I think sometimes it's just such a difficult to separate these.
Well, I think money, you got to go with Hogan.
I have Hogan on the list as well, and a dollar sign right next to him, believe it or not.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And it's interesting, as far as guys that drew money, when we talk about Austin and Rock, the thing with Austin and Rock, I don't think, the belt, I think when Rock won the belt the first time, I think it kind of gave him a little bit of added credibility. And even when Austin did the first time, because he really took off after the first time. But I almost think that they were drawing cards with and without the title. And I guess maybe Bruno Sammartino was as well. But I don't, it's funny, I don't see, like, Austin, who was, one of the great money players in history, I don't know that I would rank him as one of the greatest world champions, also because, when they change the belt so often, guys aren't really associated with the belt. Ric Flair, for better or for worse, was associated, and Hulk Hogan, they were associated with those belts for, years and years and years. And when Ric Flair was not the champion, and when Hulk Hogan was not the champion, people looked at them and they still saw a champion, even though Rick was never, when he didn't have the belt, often was not portrayed as champion. And I think it's one of the reasons why, here today at 54, Rick is so revered, and, his DVD is like the best-selling DVD in the history of wrestling.
Question. You talk about four guys. Hey, Bruno, Thesz, Hulk, Flair. Wow.
I think the thing also is it's two different eras now.
Oh, yeah.
So there will never be a time where you're going to see a guy with a run like that again. It's just never.
We're never going to have a 7-year, 8-year run like Lou Thesz had in the 50s or Bruno had. It never happened.
And I think one of the reasons I would vote for Flair is that I think that the fans always saw him as the champion. Regardless of the booking, I think they always saw him as the man, and whether he had the belt or not, they thought that it was his belt. And he was given the belt so many times because it would be given other people, because people thought, this is it for Flair. And they put the belt with someone else and they realized, no, it's got to go back to Flair. And so I would give him a lot of credit for that one.
Yes. That's a really tough category. And then we're not even, how do you want to reach? Do you want to reach back into the 30s, into the 20s? Do you want to look back to the Strangler Lewis era? Golly, it's
that's before our time, and obviously it's totally different, but the belt meant everything then, too.
Oh, it was everything.
Yeah. They used to steal and double-cross. And
all across the board.
Yeah, because the whole thing, the stuff they did for the belt then was a lot worse than the stuff they do now, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, you could, that's a tricky one. But
no, Larry, I want to ask you because one of the how about where would you put Dory Funk Jr. or Jack Briscoe or some of those guys from the 70s that or Arlie Race?
Dory Jr., Race, Briscoe, all good champions. But unfortunately, in my mind, I'd have to put him a notch below the Fez, Bruno, Hulk, and Flair. And one of the things that Bryan said about certainly, while Mike and I commented on a couple of reasons why he would say, well, maybe not Rick. But on the other hand, about Flair, hey, for 20 years, he was and has been associated as the man. Maybe they didn't call it the champion, but it's kind of synonymous, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going through the greatest of all time category, and I think that we're not going to get even close to through this list. I'd like to ask both of you guys as far as, and this is a subject that I'm sure we'll talk about in depth come the summer, which is the Hall of Fame, and I guess I'll throw three names at you because the three real controversial names in the next ballot as far as because they're on for the first time, and that's Kurt Angle, Triple H, and Kazushi Sakuraba. Larry, I guess I'll start with you. Any preliminary thoughts on those three names?
My first thought is I kind of like Angle because I fear for his future physically, and that's not his fault, but it's the way the business is today. And you can make an argument for Sakuraba. I guess I'm a little more hesitant on Triple H, but maybe I'm getting a little bit led astray by politics.
Yeah, I think it's difficult when you make that Hall of Fame judgment. How much you factor politics into it. I think that had so much to do with the Shawn Michaels balloting in the last couple of years. But I think at this point I would be a definite yes on Angle and Sakuraba and leaning towards a yes with Triple H, but not officially decided yet. Okay.
Bryan, any thoughts as far as you go?
I think that I could find arguments to vote yes for all three, even though I'm sure there are plenty of people that will try to make the opposing argument about Hunter. But
a lot of people will make the opposing argument about Hunter.
There are a lot of reasons he should be in, though, so I'd probably vote yes for all three.
Really? Okay. Hunter, I certainly can, I can certainly make a case for Hunter. I can't say I'm sold 100% on him, but at the same time, I feel like, God, when he was on top, it was the hottest period in the business, and he was a free guy, and boy, I can't come up with a number 3 guy in the whole business during a period when it was this hot that isn't in, and that's kind of like the thing that kind of makes me want to vote for him. I got a lot of reasons not to. I'm going to go to Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's happening?
Hey guys, the question I have is I want to ask, what U.S. matches had the results that caused the greatest emotion in the fans, the attendants, and around the country? And I would have to say, personally, would be Kerry Von Erich against Ric Flair.
Boy, that one comes to mind. Maybe and of course I was not at this match, but Bruno Sammartino and Ivan Koloff when Bruno lost and the place went dead. You guys, Larry, you saw those classic matches. What would you say was the most emotional match that you saw?
Probably the most emotional match that I can remember is when Johnny Valentine won a Missouri State title from Harley Race.
Really?
The crowd just erupted. And the emotional crowd that maybe didn't have quite the payoff at the end was that Flair Brody 1-hour match that was taped for Japan that Ric Flair has talked to you about before, too, that was his favorite. And I'm sure I've told you, too. if you'd have thrown a match into that crowd, 18,000 people, the whole building would have just exploded.
Wow.
It was that close. It was just, you could feel it. I can feel it now. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
Mike, any...
I guess, to me, off the top of my head, I would probably go with Fred Blassie, John Tolis. Just totally different era in terms of crowd reaction in Southern California in the 70s as opposed to what you certainly see today. But I guess that's one that would come off the top of my head.
I'm trying to think if there was ever any WWE one that really got to me. I was at the Flair Kerry Von Erich match at the stadium, and that one, when it wasn't so much the match, although the pinfall was, because it wasn't really that great of a match. Those two had many matches much better than that. Pinfall was such a big deal because, they'd been teased with that pinfall for, 4 years practically. And then when Kerry had the belt and he was walking to the back and Fritz came out and the mom came out and they all hugged, that was an amazing moment in wrestling history. Live, I don't know. Bryan, is any WWE ones that really... Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels finish, my God, I remember, in Survivor Series, but for a totally different reason.
Yeah.
Well, also Shawn Michaels and Sid Vicious at the Royal Rumble because it was like the maybe 65,000 people there.
I don't recall that being anything.
Yeah, I actually was just...
one of the people in the building, I mean.
Yeah, it was a hometown babyface pop, but, for a world title, but I don't remember that one being that incredible either. I don't know.
How about Goldberg and Hogan in Atlanta?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Goldberg and Hogan in Atlanta. Yeah.
Before we go, I want to...
As far as a WCW event that I was there live, that's the one that sticks out from the past few years, at least.
Yeah, because you know what? When they showed that tape on WWE, of course we haven't seen that match, or I hadn't watched that match back in years. It was an amazing visual watching that, and they should have shown that tape far more often than they did, when Goldberg was coming in. But yeah, I think that was a real good one. If anyone else has any ideas...
Foley beating Rock that first time.
Yeah, in Providence, to win the title for the first time, that was I wouldn't rate it at that level, though, but that was a big deal because of...
For WWF.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go bouncing around categories. Best ever on interviews. Larry, why don't you start with some of the names that come to your mind?
Well, the first two that really pop into my head, especially for long term, have to be Ric Flair and Jim Cornette. But Mike mentioned something earlier, and I think I'm remiss not having thought of this name. Bobby Heenan was pretty doggone good, too.
Absolutely.
Flair, Cornette, Heenan would be a real good threesome to start with.
Well, I have those three on my list, and also want to point out that I did speak to Bobby Heenan today, and he asked me to pass along best wishes to you, Larry. And, there are very few people in the wrestling business. Years and years later, Bobby Heenan still has positive things to say. So you should feel pretty damn privileged.
I do. That's because I agreed with him. See, I felt bad when Sam had given the preliminary payoff of $200 and he paid Jack Lanza $1,200 for the main event, and Bobby come in complaining about it. Bobby was right, because if it wasn't for Bobby Heenan, Blackjack Lanza wouldn't have drawn 50 cents.
And I've heard the story many, many times about how Wally Carbo made the phone call to Sam and got things changed by the next show.
Yeah, Wally was good. And Sam was a different era. It took him a while, but he came around fine. But and he definitely appreciated Bob. What a great performer Bobby Heenan was. I think a lot of people have forgotten what an excellent manager he was.
I don't. What did he say about? Because I know Bobby worked Thursday night Thanksgiving for Dory Funk Jr.
Really?
Yeah. Did you hear anything about that? I heard he did very well.
Bobby just said that it was a small crowd, and it was great to see Dory again. I think Missy Hyatt was there, he mentioned.
Yeah, she was.
But he really didn't go into much detail other than that.
Okay.
So in other words, we had Flair, Heenan, and Cornette. Is that what you...
Those are the three off the top of my head. I mean,
I agree. Let me add to that Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah.
For sure. I think you have to throw in recently The Rock and Austin.
Oh, The Rock for sure.
For sure, The Rock.
Yeah.
And
Austin when he's in front of the people is one of the best I've ever seen.
And possibly, consider Blassie as well.
Blassie?
In that same group. I asked Heenan about it today, and he said Silento Rodriguez because he...
Oh, God.
Bobby's got some good names.
Do you know who actually, was Superstar Billy Graham?
Yeah. Billy Graham was a good name. I don't know if he had the long term. Well, I mean, you're
he sure influenced everybody.
Yes, he did.
Everybody copied him. Jesse Ventura, and again, I wouldn't put Jesse Ventura at the top level with these guys, but he would be the level right underneath. I really, with the AWA Jesse Ventura, I could say a lot negative about Jesse, but I loved his interviews. And he better have had good interviews because he certainly couldn't wrestle.
I can remember back as a kid, and now, again, boy, I hate to keep dating myself with some of the older guys, but just not overlook them. When Buddy Rogers was on top as a heel, he could do an interview that could literally just turn thousands of people ready to kill him. I mean, he was a great psychologist when he talked, when he was in his prime.
Now, that's probably, I would presume, again, would be like Blassie.
I'd say Blassie and he were probably very much similar because Blassie, the key thing, and Mike, you'd be better on this than me, the interview may have been the key thing for Fred, wasn't it?
Oh, my goodness. Not even close to whatever number 2 would be, which probably is color, I guess. But no, the interview was the whole package with Fred.
Yeah.
We got to put Fred certainly very close to our top 3 then. And 4 being, Dusty Rhodes was good. And I understand what you're saying about Superstar Graham because he influenced an entire generation coming up.
What about Vince?
Vince is... you know what? Mick Foley. Mick Foley was one of the best interviews I ever saw. Vince Vince at times, and certainly in recent weeks.
He's just been incredible.
Down days.
Yes, he has.
Although the Father Frank was that one I didn't like, but I'd say the last couple of weeks there have been some great Vince McMahon.
Okay, here's your question on psychology of interviews, though. Now, and actually, I was on KMWatch Radio Friday night, and this came up about just the whole interview situation. Now you have 15 minutes to make your point. Not that many years back, you had 3 minutes to make your point. Does that make the person that was able to tell his story in 3 minutes a better interviewer than the person who's only able to tell his story in 15 or 18 minutes?
And what about 20 minutes where there is no point?
Well,
that's Triple H.
Entirely.
I would say I don't know that Vince would be that good in a 3-minute setting.
I think the 15-minute is more difficult to pull off, especially now in front of the live crowds at the big arenas.
Yeah, keep them awake.
Yeah.
Keep them involved. Of course, 3 minutes, I'll tell you, you had to get there, but you had to get it over. You couldn't miss one beat, because you missed a beat, the whole thing's gone.
Yeah.
I think there's more pressure too today, because especially with the Monday night show, that interview that you're doing is in front of a live crowd, as opposed to in the 60s and 70s when 90% of the interviews were done in a backstage setting and they could be redone. And if you didn't get your point across or you stumbled, you were allowed to do it again. So I think it's again different part of the game today.
Okay, but you know what? When you say that, the thing is how many of those promoters actually did that? I mean, I saw some unbelievable flubs on television they never redid.
We didn't redo anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you know. I mean, when WCW came around, I think they started redoing because they were TV people. But in the early days, I mean, like, I think most of that might as well have been live. It was live to tape anyway.
Even the backstage stuff.
They didn't. I don't know of a lot of second takes. I mean, I'm sure that there.
I remember doing some interviews for Vern Gagne when I went up there a couple of times when Gene Okerlund was unable to do things, and there things would be redone, yeah, because it was backstage and usually done in a hotel, restaurant, or ballroom, at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the guys would be kind of stumbling in and trying. That wasn't real smooth.
after wrestling the night before, yeah.
That was real ugly.
Yeah, let's.
I don't think it was the wrestling the night before that got him off track.
No, it wasn't. I guess, we're going to go, we'll have to go across the break for this one for sure, but best promoter. And I mean...
Well, I have certain prejudices here, and I mean, the top two to me, of course, are Sam and Vince McMahon, and I admit Vince took it to different levels, so, I put Vince number one, grudgingly, not wanting to do it, but, hey, he's the man.
But they have to be 1, 2, I think.
Really? Because Baba was awfully good.
I have, the other ones that I have listed are Baba, Paul Bosch, Eddie Graham.
What about the Luderoff?
If you go international, I think you have to, consider Luderoff.
No, Salvador, if nothing else, because Salvador built the whole business and built it into this cultural phenomenon.
For many, many years.
And if you're talking about changing the face of the business, throw in Antonio Pena.
Yeah, but he's insane.
I just had dinner with him a couple of weeks ago. Oh,
I know. I know. Antonio Pena was, but I see Antonio Pena almost like a Paulie in that they were really brilliant guys, and they put out some great products. But I don't see, and even though Pena's last 10 years, he hasn't had the longevity of. I mean, Sam had 40 years, and Vince hasn't had 40 years, but Vince has had 20 years, of doing some incredible stuff and getting that second lease on life and everything. I can't see like those guys in that realm, so to speak.
I definitely put him at the next level down, but I think Vince McMahon, Sam Mushnick, and Paul Bosch, you've probably got the big three right there.
And I can make
and Baba too.
Baba.
Yeah, Baba as well.
Yeah. Actually, we didn't go over the break on that one.
Okay.
But I guess Brian, is there any names that you want to pop in?
I just had like Vince and Baba and Mushnick and the Luderoffs on my list. So.
Well, golly, so we're like and
about them all.
Vince number one. Anyone disagree with that?
I don't think you can.
He has been about 5 years.
Yeah, I know. 5 years we may change our mind.
Yeah, but he still have had a 20-year run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, because I look back at the Larry and I just wrote the thing and looked back at the Sam Mushnick years, and you have to respect. I mean, the one thing with Sam is you have to respect his talk about going up. Okay, his last show was the biggest 20,000 people. Yeah. So I mean, he went out on top.
And there are people, Dave. And you guys probably know that you may have heard this story. People who think they drew that crowd. The truth.
Oh yeah, Dusty.
Nicky Garagiola and I could have wrestled, and we'd have sold out in advance.
Yeah, I mean, but the only promoters that I know that drew a house for their retirement would be, and Baba would have, and Vince could have, and may at some point, but
Paul Bosch as well.
Our Paul Bosch and Sam are the only ones that I'm aware of.
Got out on top.
Yeah, because I went to Paul Bosch's retirement show, and Oh, that weather was horrendous that day, and it was sold out, and I mean, it was, and you know, I'm sure, and Hogan thought he drew that house too. And I got 3 names that we did not talk about for best promoter, and I want to throw these names out at Larry and Mike especially, because they're, for the most part, before Bryan's time. Although one of them's Bryan's grandfather.
Oh.
So anyway, here's the 3 names: Vince McMahon Sr., Jim Barnett, and Toots Mondt. Larry, you know, you'd be more familiar than Mike actually, because you know you dealt with Vince Sr.
Dealt with Vince Sr., dealt with Jim Barnett plenty.
That's right. Yeah, Jim Barnett's the reason you weren't Booker in WCW.
Many reasons. Well, it's funny. I'll tell you, if you had best manipulator category, that's Barnett.
Okay.
Okay? And I don't necessarily mean that in a negative fashion. Senior always came across to me as so very dignified, and he had a hard line that he drew there between talent and office. I don't think I'd put him up where Sam was, up where his son is, up where Baba or Bosch is. I think he was in a good position. I kind of heard that, so I maybe wouldn't put Senior quite there. Barnett had a lot of obstacles against him when he got into wrestling. And, you know, the social considerations did matter. And probably do matter to a certain extent even now.
Didn't even want him in the NWA.
Did not want him in the NWA. I mean, he was a smart man, and he had a very successful career. Toots Mondt, I met later in life because he actually ended up living in St. Louis. He married a St. Louis woman. I met him afterwards, but again, now here I have to go on what Sam told me. Sam always felt that Toots Mondt was the power behind the throne for Vince Sr., and for what went before Vince Sr. in the East Coast. I mean, Sam felt that Toots Mondt was pure power when it came to promotion, probably in the 30s, 40s.
Toots went a lot places. Mike, didn't Toots Mondt go to L.A. at one point after being kicked out of New York?
Yeah, I think so, and the positives to me on a Toots Mondt would be...
I mean, longevity.
Decades and decades. I'm going to guess probably starting in the 20s or 30s.
20s for sure, because he was there with Lewis.
For certain going through the 60s.
He was with Vince Sr. in the 60s.
Coming to the office in St. Louis, we were in the Warwick Hotel, so that would have been about 76, 77. That was after he'd kind of been pushed out of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd say, yeah, he must have been active well into the 60s. I'd say Mondt, now as you say Toots Mondt, and it also gives us some generational coverage. I mean, he was behind the trust and everything, back in what they called the trust when Paul Bowser and people like that were running. But Toots Mondt was a real operator, and believe me, if Sam respected him, they had to be tough.
Okay, how about Frank Tunney?
Easygoing guy, not at that level.
Okay.
Positives on Vince Sr., I think, building the Garden.
Yes.
Positives on Jim Barnett, the success that he had all over the world.
Positive on Vince Sr. is I think that Vince Sr. knew how to build a champion, and I mean and Sam did too. But I think that one of the things that WWE did very well, and Vince did in his early years very well, is
you know, Vince Sr. never wanted his son to be in the ring ever.
Oh, knows that.
Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
How wrestling could have changed.
That's, you know, there's a lot of things, you know, how wrestling could have changed. I mean, when I look back at like so many little things, I mean, one of the things in what was it, 86, yeah, when Nick bought the time slot from Vince, if Crockett hadn't bought that time slot, Watts would have got it, and Ted Turner and Watts were going to go in a partnership in 86, and you know, with Ted Turner's money behind Bill Watts, I mean, who knows? I mean.
I remember that first TV when it would air. Vince Jr. was here in St. Louis because we were doing the production on what was then called Superstars of Wrestling, and I guess that was a weekend we had a show and we'd done interviews or something. And Vince Jr. and I sitting in the control room at Channel 11 in St. Louis, and Jr. just saying, "Can you believe it? I own that time slot, and I can't." And I just and understandably angry and just raging.
Oh, because Turner was going to kick him off and everything.
Yeah.
Well, understandably, yeah.
Yeah. But yes, Senior would deserve some consideration. I agree with that. Probably the 3 names in the older era. Mondt definitely was a power, and I had some good times with Jim Barnett too. We had agreements where we worked together. Jim was a great manipulator, and he had a lot of success all over the world.
Okay, let's go. I want to go to Pete in Sudbury, Ontario, because he's been holding for a long time. Pete, what's going on? Pete, well, you're gone. All right, we're going to Will in Houston. Will, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
I was just, who do you think has probably the best physique in wrestling?
The best?
All time.
All time?
Yeah.
Let's go with off steroids and on steroids, to be fair. What do you guys say? You know, off steroids, we were talking when he died. Art Thomas was pretty amazing if you actually look at those, I mean, what would you say, Larry? I saw you.
I saw Art. I mean, are we talking about his wrestling ability?
Oh God, no, we're not talking about his wrestling ability.
Art Thomas was pretty impressive.
I mean, for a non-steroid guy, you know.
Yeah, and I think he was clean. As far as I know, he was clean, but then I was a little naive about the whole thing back then, to be honest with you.
I think he may have been.
Well, what about more recently?
Scott Steiner, I mean, as far as like just absolutely totally freaky physique, you gotta give him that. I mean, it's.
Do you want the physique? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a wrestling. I mean, like wrestling physique is so different. I mean, a young Tony Atlas looked for his time.
Tony looked pretty.
What's the exact question?
Best physique.
You remember Earl Maynard?
Oh yeah, I saw Earl Maynard. Me and Mike both saw Earl Maynard.
Oh God! Oh yeah! Oh.
He was waiting for that one.
Back to his question. I think a lot of people would say Rick Rude.
Uh-huh.
I'm surprised that nobody brought up Jim Hellwig.
I mean, Jim Hellwig had a bodybuilder physique. I don't know.
I'm not good on the bodybuilder stuff. I mean, I don't know what I should be really looking for. I mean, I'm probably just baffled by big muscles.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go to best manager, and I think that there's one. I'm the best manager. I think that there's one that totally stands out.
And then I even talked to him.
And you just talked to him today.
Category.
Yeah. I think that like if I couldn't put anyone. I mean there's others, and obviously Cornette.
And I think he's a solid number 2.
Do you? I wouldn't argue it. I mean I guess of the ones I've seen, I'd have to rate Heenan above Cornette. Because Heenan carried a whole territory for much, you know what I mean? Whereas Cornette was an act that was part of strong territories. But Heenan, he really carried the AWA for years and years.
And he was revolutionary in terms of a lot of things that he did were just, he just was good. Bobby, Bobby Heenan number 1, I couldn't agree more. And I give Cornette a good strong 2. Again, I name I only know, and I can't say I saw him because Sam did not have manager until Bobby Heenan came in. I keep hearing about Red Berry.
Well, I've heard about Red Berry, and the only, I've seen his interviews on old tapes, and I mean, it was impressive for its time. I mean, he definitely could turn a phrase.
Well, I talked to Heenan about it today, and this is one of the categories that I ran by him, and he concurred with me that he was done, but that Jim Cornette was number 2 because of his flawless interviews. In terms of Wild Red Berry, I asked him what Gorilla Monsoon thought about Wild Red Berry. And the response from Heenan was Gorilla said that Red Berry was cheap.
I'd like to make a call. Please hang up.
We're getting like bombarded here.
So what the heck?
The other names that Heenan brought up, and I figure that I have to give the nod to him to fill in the blanks on 3 and 4 would be Ernie Roth, the Grand Wizard, in the 3 spot. And he said, without question, the toughest manager of all time, not necessarily the best, not necessarily the best interview, would have been Gentleman Saul, because of the era that he was in and the people that he had to deal with in terms of the craziness of the fans throughout the South.
Yeah, I forgot him entirely.
I'll tell you what. When I was a kid, one of the best managers that I ever saw, and I think it would have held up. I mean, as far as heat-getting manager, I mean, and not no means the level of Jim Cornette or Bobby Heenan, but I just remember Ken Ramey being really good. He was one of those old school Tennessee managers who came to California.
The Medics, who was he with?
Interns.
The interns.
The interns.
And the Medics too. Yeah.
Yeah, they're different names, different places.
Yeah, they were the same guys actually. Yeah, Jim Starr and what was the other one? Jungle Jim Starr and Tom Andrews, right?
Tom Andrews is Starr and Andrews. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Jimmy Hart? Where's he fit in?
Underneath, don't you think?
That's kind of what I think too.
I mean, Jimmy Hart was great in Memphis. And he was good in WWE, but I don't know. I just, there's something about Heenan and Cornette. I don't know. I would rate them above him.
The other name that came up today when we were discussing it, and neither of us really had a definite strong opinion, was Bobby Davis.
That was before my time, although I've seen some clips. What about Albano?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Bryan, any names that you pop into your head?
No, I had Heenan and Cornette.
Well, it's amazing everyone's got 1 and 2 on that one.
Minds worked in the same path.
Yes. Greatest heel of all time. Any names? Mike.
Sheik, Fred Blassie.
Sheik, Fred Blassie.
I think that has to be
Buddy Rogers.
I like Rogers as a heel, especially when in his run in late 50s, early 60s.
Internationally, I think you have to take into consideration Dump Matsumoto.
That's a good name. That's a really good name.
Yeah.
I asked Heenan about best heel of all time.
Yes?
Vince McMahon, because both the fans and the boys hate him equally.
Bobby has not lost.
But Vince McMahon is one of the greatest heels of all time.
Was a heel, and you can even, people will be appalled at this, but Hunter was a top heel when that company made more money than anything.
Well, my question as to that would be, when you're talking about a heel, again, do you want longevity? Because a lot of guys who could qualify as heels a certain part of their careers are also qualifying as baby faces a certain part of their careers. Maybe Sheik and Blassie a little less than the rest of them.
Sheik probably the real exception to that rule, because that was a real rarity when he ever was, and
right.
Blassie quite a bit more with the babyface turn in Los Angeles for several years.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm trying to think. There's a lot of them that had runs. Roddy Piper was awfully good. He really was.
1980s.
Yeah, the early Roddy Piper at the WrestleMania year, around the time of the first WrestleMania, and it was real important time in wrestling history. So I think, that one really pops to mind from that period, and even in the Carolinas and Georgia, before he went to WWF.
Very good idea.
I
like Piper.
Yeah,
I like Piper in there a lot. Some of the heels, it's really hard to think of them as heels. Though, when
like Kurt Angle, I can't think of him as a heel, even though, and not that he would be at that level, but he was a heel for most of his career. But it's such
for Farmer.
It's like an entertaining heel as opposed to a money drawing heel.
Yeah, but isn't that just kind of the nature of the business, decade plus, that because of the appreciation possibly that the people have for the performers, that it's really difficult to get that old-fashioned Chic type heat or that old-fashioned Blassie type heat.
You couldn't do it.
It's impossible.
You couldn't do it. No, you're right.
Very, very hard, if not impossible.
I think Ric Flair was pretty good at getting people who loved him to boo him when he needed to.
At least for that one match, yeah.
For at least, until they came the next time and they wanted to cheer him again.
Yeah, wow, he's good. I really like him. But that's
what was really good was I would say the 1997 DX version of Shawn Michaels. I mean, as far as the last couple of years, remember those like in Memphis and Little Rock where 2 straight nights he caused riots?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I always heard the legend of Boris Malenko in Florida. I don't, again, I never saw him, so I don't know.
Trying to think back into that era, we're probably missing somebody out of Memphis who was a tremendous heel back then, Sputnik Monroe or something.
Lawler was a great heel.
Lawler was a great heel.
Yeah.
NWO Hogan had some weird heat, where people would pelt the ring with garbage.
NWO Hogan, he was trying
for a year or two, I would say
he was trying to be too cool, and then it was only for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to do it with a wink and still be a babyface.
Oh, absolutely. Best tag team.
Money-wise, I think you have to say the Road Warriors.
Money-wise, yeah. But I would say ability-wise, I wouldn't even have them near the top.
Again, this is that subjective analysis. Where do you go? Work-wise, gosh, you can make a case, I think, for
Midnight Express.
Midnight Express, without question. Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson.
Certainly by reputation. Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel.
At what point, Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel were very good, and they were a lot, because there were some teams that were together, but they weren't together long, so I don't know, do you take like the original Kangaroos?
You have to consider them. Keenan, by the way, gave the nod to Stevens and Patterson over Stevens and Bockwinkel, and who would know better than him?
That's right. Who would know better? Larry, again, the original Kangaroos were before, and Mike, did you ever see the original Kangaroos? They were before.
I did in Los Angeles in the early 60s, yes.
Well, what's your thoughts?
I think that they have to be considered, in that top 5 without question. And, the team that I'll throw out here that nobody would ever consider would be Black Gordman and Goliath.
Well, they were very, very good.
Incredible. You had to really watch them on that regular basis, which if you watch Los Angeles wrestling in the 1970s, you could appreciate what they accomplished. What about from an influence standpoint, the British Bulldogs?
Changing style. But you know what? They weren't a team that many years, and they were prominent in Calgary and definitely in Japan. WWE, I almost think that they were historically overrated. Not that they weren't because they changed the style, but they were only there for a couple of years. And they were only on top for, like that one WrestleMania, really. They were not,
if you want to go way back, throw in the Dusek brothers.
Well, as far as like originated and
Put it on the map
and popularized it, but as far as like a team, like how about the Andersons were a team that carried a territory. I think Stevens and Bockwinkel, without a doubt, carried a territory because Vern wasn't working regularly, so they were using the tag team as a main event. I think Stevens and Patterson here carried the territory as a team.
I think they did. And how about this? When the Andersons carried a territory, it was a tag team territory.
Yeah.
Very good point, because the Carolinas were. I mean, you're talking Rip Hawk and Sweet Hansen were a big tag team then.
Well, they were, yeah. They're
not at this level. Please don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying it was a very much a tag team territory, and it had been for years. So when the Andersons came, they even took it up a little bit higher.
How about for legendary status, Bob and Inoki and the Funks?
Good point.
I think you have to put them right up there, maybe in terms of that longevity, how many years that they teamed.
Well, the Funks, yeah. I mean, they're better Japanese teams by far than Baba and Inoki, but they're like if you were to ask, because of I guess what they became as singles later, they became the legendary team almost.
How much did the Funks work together as a team in Japan, Dave? You probably know better than
I mean, for what?
A lot of years.
For like 15 years.
I mean, they were together a lot, not just once a year, but a lot.
Oh yeah, regular, and I tell you another team, Hanson and Brody.
Hanson and Brody were.
I mean, in Japan, they were it. I mean, that's what everybody, like Gordy and Williams and all those other
teams. That
was
just where I was going to go, was Gordy and Williams.
Yeah, they were a great team too, but they were like almost a copy of Hanson and Brody were the ones that everybody, I think that's the ones that everyone kind of took as like the real, great brawling team.
If you're taking the tag teams though, and since they're in the Hall of Fame as a tag team, aren't they Freebirds? Are they at that category?
Influential, pretty influential. You know what I mean? Like, there's always been a lot of debate about the Freebirds for Hall of Fame. I think that they should be in there. I don't know about the greatest.
Yeah, I can't see them.
I can't see them as the greatest. I could see them as in the top 10.
Yeah.
Bryan, modern teams. The thing is, though, when I say modern team,
it's so different now, though. You know what I mean? It's like
I haven't seen a team at Midnight Express level in years. I mean, Brian Pillman and Steve Austin had the chance, but they've got
Hart Foundation. I think if you really look back at their matches, it was like a one-man show.
Yeah. How about let's get to most underrated historically. I know Larry had someone you wanted to say right away.
Well, Pat O'Connor.
Yeah.
And you had a great name, too, Don Leo Jonathan.
Yeah.
I'll throw out a third name here, which, may sound a little bit silly, but he's not going to be anywhere else because of his body, but he had a body, but a great worker, drew money, Harley Race.
Yeah.
Although I think O'Connor is probably held in less esteem because after he lost the title in 61, really he became a partner in Kansas City, settled down there, and he was in a territory that really was the pits. And it's like he disappeared on the wrestling map, except for going into St. Louis once in a while, where he really didn't push him on top that much. And he's putting over guys like Roger Kirby, but yet I remember hearing all the different stories from guys, from Ted DiBiase to Dick Murdoch. When they were learning, they went to Kansas City and they worked for 3 months, and they were with O'Connor every night. And my God, I learned so much, and I had no skin on my back when I went home. But O'Connor was awful good.
I mean, it's a great work. Like when people talk about the greatest workers of all time, and again, it's relative. But in his era, I mean, wasn't O'Connor, Rogers, and Ray Stevens? Weren't they the guys?
They were the guys.
Yeah, I mean that's what I always heard.
Talk to Nick Bockwinkel about O'Connor sometime, and he'll tell you stories about when he was breaking in. He wrestled O'Connor, and he'd say there were times when I had no idea how I got in the position I got in and how I was getting the heat I got. I was just going where Pat shoved me. I don't even know how he put me there. I mean, because the thing with O'Connor, because when we talk about like a lot of the names. Like people will talk about Buddy Rogers, they'll talk about Ray Stevens, they'll talk about Ric Flair forever. Oh yeah. And O'Connor's name has not stood the test of time, but he was, considered nearly. I wonder if that will happen with Steamboat. Right. Years later. But Steamboat I think has got the advantage because of the videotapes. There's not much of O'Connor. What about Don Leo Jonathan? I only saw him work a few times. I remember as a huge big man who could really move around that ring. Yeah. Mike, which
same, my recollection on Don Leo Jonathan from the times that I saw him in the mid-'60s in Los Angeles. Just trying to come up with a couple other names to supplement that list. I don't know, is Kurt Hennig possibly, in terms of underrated? When he was at his peak, when he was in good shape? I mean, he was a great wrestler, but I think he knew it. I think so. What about Billy Robinson? You know what, probably. Jumbo Tsuruta, Billy Robinson, because I think that they would be historically, both of those two were really, really good and
Yeah, maybe Billy Robinson.
Heenan's choice was Dick Murdoch, by the way.
Really?
Well, I mean, we all know that, like, Dick Murdoch, when he wanted to be, was as good as anybody.
I mean, I'm prejudiced because I was a friend of Dick's and everything, and I mean, it's interesting to hear that Heenan say that. I would have thrown Murdoch's name out there. Well, I already put O'Connor's name out. I shouldn't, and I was going to throw Race out, but Murdoch could do anything any of those guys could do.
He said Heenan's comment was work equal to a world's heavyweight champion. Just too bad that he wanted to be Killer Carl Cox.
It's true.
That's right. He wanted to be a clown.
Yeah, he enjoyed that.
Yeah.
You know, I made a quote, and it's in the Post-Dispatch this week, where they had me do some quick capsule comments about different guys who are on the tapes. And when Murdoch, I said, he never knew how good he really was.
Yeah.
I don't think he did.
I want to go to Jeff in Jacksonville. Jeff, what's going on?
Hey, how you guys doing today?
Doing really good.
Good. I was just going to throw a name out there for probably one of the best babyface interviews that through the history of wrestling, and it really came out during the incidents with Piper in '82 in Georgia, and that was Bullet Bob Armstrong.
Bob Armstrong was a good interview.
He was awesome. I mean, and he just expressed that emotion. I go back and I watch the old tapes I have of him in Alabama, and I tell you, Bob could draw a crowd, you know, to come out to see him, you know, beat the top heel.
Yeah, he was a super strong. You know, Bob Armstrong and Roddy Piper, to me, was the greatest feud that they never. I mean, I remember watching Georgia week in and week out, and I wanted for months. I mean, they didn't let those guys touch. For months, they built that thing up. They came in, they did a great house. Bob Armstrong beat Roddy Piper clean in the middle in the first match, and the feud was over. And you know, that was, you know, what can I say?
I don't know if you blame Barnett or Ole Anderson on that.
It was Ole Anderson, because Jim Barnett's instructions were, whatever you do, don't beat Roddy Piper, and then Roddy Piper got pinned. So, Jeff, thanks very much. I want to throw out a couple of tag team names and try to touch on the greatest of all time. We obviously are going to have to do more on this later. And I want to also apologize to people who have been hanging on. I knew I didn't have enough time for this, but tried. Anyway, a couple of tag teams I want to throw out at you guys. For as far as Impact, the Crush Gals, Riki Choshu and Yoshiaki Yatsu. And then the two that had the best tag matches I think I've ever seen, which would be Misawa and Kobashi and Kawada and Taue.
Wow, you're talking about the absolute cream of the international crop when you talk about that grouping.
Okay, how about there's another one that, Mike, you and I saw a lot, and I mean, I don't think they were around as a team long enough, but they could have been one of the best ever, and that's Love Machine and Eddie Guerrero.
Wow, exactly. That was all about potential when you talk about those guys. What could have been if they could have been a tag team for a couple of more years, and I think we're seeing maybe just a little bit of that now with Los Guerreros in WWE.
But I don't think that it's the same.
Oh, not even close. But you're seeing just that sparkle of what could have been.
I will say this though: Eddie Guerrero is closer to Art Barr now than he was to Eddie Guerrero. If you look at the all around performer. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously a better worker than Art Barr ever was, but
how Eddie has come out of his shell in terms of promo work in the last couple of years compared to his days in WCW is an amazement.
And has not really been rewarded for it.
And his work has not dropped off at all either.
Yeah. Greatest wrestler ever. We'll probably have to talk more about this at another date, but Larry, why don't you start?
First three come to my mind, and mainly just 20 generations. Flair, Dez, Lewis, mainly Lewis on reputation. Obviously, we didn't see him, but it's almost like we have to pay tribute. Somebody spilled a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to lay the foundation for what we do today, so you almost got to recognize his name in there at least somewhere. But Flair stands out. Dez stands out. Apples and oranges, different eras.
Mike?
I have Ric Flair, and I propose that we have part 2 of this discussion in a couple of weeks.
Okay, I think that we need to do that because we have a lot more categories and, you know, concerning the greatest. Bryan, any names that you want to throw out real quick before we go?
Ric Flair.
Close. Drive safely.
Okay, hey, thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun. I knew it was going to be a fun show. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Bryan. We will see everybody next Sunday. Hopefully, in fact, we will have more time for phone calls next Sunday. So, and talk about current wrestling as well. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.